Not off screen, not as a footnote, but at the exact moment his legacy finally collides with the future of Yellowstone. And the most shocking part? His death is only the beginning, because 1969 isn't just another prequel timeline, it's the year everything breaks, the year John Dutton is shaped, and the year the Dutton family quietly starts a war that will echo all the way into Yellowstone. Section 1. Why? 1969 changes everything. 1969 is not a random choice. It is one of the most explosive years in American history, and for the Dutton family, it's the year the past and the future collide head-on. By this point, the Yellowstone Ranch has already survived wars, betrayals, and generations of bloodshed. But what makes 1969 different is that the danger is no longer coming only from outside forces. This time, the threat is internal, generational, and deeply personal. This is the year Spencer Dutton reaches the end of his journey, and John Dutton's story truly begins. We already know that Spencer will die during this timeline, and surprisingly, that knowledge doesn't weaken the story. It actually strengthens it. There's something haunting about watching a character when you know their ending. Every decision matters more. Every conversation feels heavier. Every moment carries the weight of finality. Spencer isn't just an old man in 1969. He is a living monument to everything the Duttons fought for and everything they're about to lose. He has survived the brutal chaos of 1923, the Great Depression, and decades of holding the ranch together through sheer will. By 1969, he isn't fighting with fists anymore. He's fighting with legacy. And this is where young John Dutton enters the picture. He's only about 10 years old, but this is the age where identity starts to form. This is where values are learned, not through speeches, but through observation. John is watching everything. He sees how his grandfather carries the weight of the land. He sees how hard choices are made in silence. He sees love expressed not through words, but through sacrifice. These moments don't feel dramatic at first, but they quietly carve the man John will become. What makes this even more powerful is the historical backdrop. 1969 is chaos. The Vietnam War is tearing families apart. The civil rights movement is reshaping the country. Tradition is being questioned everywhere. Even in Montana, even on a ranch as isolated as Yellowstone, the outside world is pressing in. The Duttons can't hide from it anymore. And that pressure forces decisions that will permanently fracture the family. One theory feels almost inevitable. John's father being drafted into Vietnam. A Dutton sent into a war that has nothing to do with land, cattle, or honor, but everything to do with survival. If that happens, Spencer doesn't just become a grandfather figure, he becomes a father again. He steps in to raise John during the most fragile years of his life. And that relationship, that bond between an aging Spencer and a young, impressionable John could be the emotional core of the entire series. At the same time, the late 1960s represent a strange contradiction. While the world is burning politically, cowboy culture is thriving, rodeos are booming, Western identity is being romanticized across America. For John, this means his childhood isn't just about chores and fences. It's about competition. It's about learning what it means to be a cowboy in a changing world where tradition is no longer guaranteed to survive. He's not just inheriting land, he's inheriting a way of life that's already under threat. And this is where the tragedy deepens. Spencer knows this world is slipping away. He sees the cracks forming before anyone else does. He understands that the ranch won't survive on strength alone anymore. It will require ruthless decisions, emotional sacrifices, and choices that will haunt future generations. John is learning all of this without even realizing it. He's absorbing pain, loyalty, and loss before he even understands the cost. But the most dangerous thing about 1969 isn't the war or the politics or even Spencer's impending death. It's the fact that this is the first time the Dutton family begins to turn against itself. And once that line is crossed, there is no going back. Because just as Spencer is trying to secure John's future, someone else is preparing to challenge it. And that raises a terrifying question. Just when it seems like the greatest threat to the Duttons is time itself, a far more dangerous force re-enters the picture: Elizabeth. For years, she has existed as a question mark in the Yellowstone timeline, a character last seen walking away from the ranch in 1923, pregnant, silent, unresolved. And that silence was never accidental. It was a warning because in 1969, Elizabeth isn't returning as the woman we once knew. She's returning as a mother with a claim, a past grievance, and nothing left to lose. By this point, Elizabeth has lived an entire life away from Montana. She's raised a son who knows the truth about his bloodline, a son who was born a Dutton but never treated like one. That kind of upbringing doesn't fade quietly. It hardens people. And when Elizabeth comes back into the picture, she isn't driven by nostalgia. She's driven by justice, or at least her version of it. In her eyes, the Yellowstone Ranch was never meant to belong solely to Spencer's line. And now that Spencer is old and vulnerable, the timing couldn't be more precise. This is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable because no one is truly wrong. Elizabeth's son does have a legitimate claim. He is blood. He was excluded not because of weakness, but because history simply moved on without him. And Spencer knows this. He understands that the choices made decades ago are now demanding consequences. The ranch isn't just land anymore. It's inheritance, identity, and proof of belonging. And Elizabeth is done being forgotten. For young John, this conflict is invisible at first, but devastating once it surfaces. Imagine discovering that everything you thought was yours is suddenly up for debate. That the land you love, the legacy you're being shaped to protect, might not even fully belong to you. This is the moment where John's innocence begins to crack, not because of violence, but because of uncertainty. And uncertainty is far more dangerous. It creates fear. It creates resentment. It creates a need to control outcomes at any cost. Spencer is trapped in the middle. On one side is the grandson he's raising, the future he's trying to secure before his death. On the other is Elizabeth, a woman he once loved, carrying decades of silence and unfinished business. This isn't a loud war. There are no gunfights, no dramatic ultimatums. It's a slow, suffocating tension. Conversations loaded with things left unsaid, glances that carry history, and decisions that can never be undone once spoken aloud. This is also where the generational curse of the Duttons truly begins, because this conflict sets a precedent. It teaches John that family is not safety, that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that love and power are often in direct opposition. These lessons don't make him cruel. They make him guarded, strategic, willing to hurt first, so he's never hurt again. This is the emotional blueprint for the man we eventually meet in Yellowstone. And Elizabeth, she isn't portrayed as a villain. She is strong, composed, and terrifyingly calm. She understands leverage, she understands timing, and she understands that Spencer's death will shift the balance of power instantly. Once he's gone, there will be no moral center left to stop the fallout. She isn't rushing, she's waiting, because she knows the clock is already ticking in her favor. The most chilling part is how quietly this all unfolds. The ranch still runs, life appears normal, but underneath, the foundation is cracking. This is the first real fracture in Dutton family history. The moment where inheritance becomes weaponized. The moment where survival starts to outweigh love. And once that mindset takes hold, it never leaves the bloodline, because when Spencer finally dies, he won't just leave behind land and memories. He'll leave behind an unresolved conflict that no one else is strong enough to contain. And that leads to the most dangerous moment of all. By the time the conflict around the ranch becomes impossible to ignore, John is no longer just a child watching from the sidelines. He may be young, but he is paying attention in a way that feels unsettling. He notices when conversations stop the moment he enters the room. He notices how adults lower their voices, how names are avoided, how certain topics are treated like open wounds. This is the phase of John's life where trust begins to erode and instinct begins to take its place. Spencer doesn't shield him from reality. That's the difference. Instead of offering comfort, he offers exposure. John learns by being present, by seeing how power actually works. He learns that land isn't protected by good intentions, but by decisiveness. That hesitation invites loss. That silence can be both a weapon and a weakness. These lessons aren't spoken out loud. They're absorbed through experience, and they shape John far more deeply than any moment of affection ever could. At the same time, the outside world keeps intruding. The Vietnam War is no longer distant news. It's personal. It's stealing fathers, brothers, and futures from families, just like the Duttons. If John's father is pulled into the draft, that absence becomes a defining wound, not because of hatred, but because of abandonment. Even if the reasons are noble, the damage remains. John learns early that love doesn't guarantee presence, and promises don't always protect the people who make them. This absence creates space, and Spencer fills it, not with softness, but with structure. He teaches John responsibility long before he's ready for it. He pushes him into manhood quietly, through expectation rather than encouragement. Wake up early, do the work. Don't complain. Don't ask for more than what you've earned. This is how John learns control. This is how he learns endurance. And this is how the emotional distance that defines him as an adult begins to take root. Meanwhile, rodeo culture becomes more than entertainment. It becomes identity. John isn't just watching cowboys perform. He's studying them, their confidence, their risk-taking, their refusal to show fear. This world teaches him that strength is public, pain is private, and weakness is unforgivable. He's learning how to perform masculinity in a way that feels necessary for survival. And once that mask forms, it never fully comes off. But what makes this phase so tragic is that John is still capable of tenderness. He still wants approval. He still looks to Spencer for guidance, not realizing that Spencer himself is running out of time. Every shared moment carries urgency, even if neither of them says it out loud. Spencer knows he won't be there to finish the job, and that knowledge makes him harder, not softer, because he believes that anything less than strength will leave John unprepared for what's coming next. Elizabeth's presence only intensifies this pressure. Her claim, her son, her quiet challenge to the future Spencer is trying to secure all hover in the background. John may not understand the details, but he understands the threat. He senses that something fundamental is being questioned, that his place in the family is no longer guaranteed, and that realization flips a switch inside him. From this point on, John doesn't just want the ranch, he needs it. Because without it, he has no anchor, no identity, no proof that he belongs. This is where the emotional transformation completes itself. John stops being reactive and starts being strategic. He learns when to stay silent, when to watch, when to wait. These are survival instincts, not personality traits. They are learned under pressure, shaped by fear of loss, and sharpened by uncertainty. And they will define every major decision he makes later in life. The terrifying truth is this: John Dutton isn't born ruthless, he's trained into it by circumstance, by love that comes with conditions, by legacy that comes with threats, and by a family that teaches him over and over again that survival matters more than peace. Because once Spencer is gone, John won't be allowed to grow slowly anymore. And that leaves one unavoidable question hanging in the air. By the time Spencer's health begins to visibly decline, the ranch itself starts to feel different. Not broken, not falling apart, just tense, like it's holding its breath. Everyone senses what's coming, even if no one dares to say it out loud. Spencer Dutton, the last living bridge to the old world, is running out of time. And once he's gone, there will be no single voice left strong enough to command loyalty without question. This is where power starts shifting in subtle, dangerous ways. Decisions that once went through Spencer now happen in whispers. Alliances quietly form. Conversations take place behind closed doors. The ranch stops being a home and starts becoming a territory. And territory always invites conflict. The land hasn't changed, but the way people look at it has. It's no longer something to protect together, it's something to win. Elizabeth understands this shift better than anyone. She doesn't push aggressively. She lets the tension do the work for her. Every unanswered question about inheritance strengthens her position. Every delay in clarity weakens John's. Her son, now grown enough to understand what's at stake, is no longer just a shadow in the background. He represents an alternative future for the ranch, a different Dutton path that never got its chance. And the longer Spencer avoids naming a successor outright, the more dangerous that alternative becomes. For John, this is the moment where fear turns into resolve. He realizes that being loved isn't enough. Being raised on the ranch isn't enough. Even blood isn't enough unless it's recognized. The idea that something could be taken from him, something he's already internalized as his responsibility, ignites a quiet fury. He doesn't lash out, he doesn't rebel, he studies, he waits, he learns how authority is claimed, not given. Spencer watches all of this with painful clarity. He knows the legacy he's built is already slipping out of his control. No matter what choice he makes, someone will be destroyed by it. If he secures John's future too forcefully, he condemns Elizabeth's son to a lifetime of resentment. If he leaves the question open, he dooms John to a war he may not survive emotionally. There is no clean ending here, only damage control. This internal struggle accelerates Spencer's decline. The weight of decades presses down all at once. He isn't afraid of death, he's afraid of what his death will unleash. The ranch has always survived because someone strong was willing to make the final call. And now, for the first time, Spencer hesitates. That hesitation ripples outward. People feel it. And when leaders hesitate, others prepare to step in. What makes this even more tragic is that John senses Spencer pulling away. Not emotionally, but spiritually. The guidance becomes less frequent. The silence grows longer. John begins to realize that whatever certainty he thought he had was borrowed time, and that realization hardens him further. He starts believing that love must be backed by force, because force is the only thing that survives. Elizabeth's patience reaches its peak here. She doesn't need to threaten. She doesn't need to demand. All she has to do is exist. Her presence alone destabilizes everything. Because she represents a truth the Duttons buried decades ago, a truth that refuses to stay buried any longer. And once it's exposed, there is no version of the future where the family remains whole. This is the exact moment the Dutton legacy stops being a shared burden and becomes a weapon. The ranch is no longer just land passed down through generations, it's leverage. And leverage always has a cost. Because when Spencer finally makes his decision, it won't unite the family, it will break it. And the terrifying question that remains is this. By the time Spencer's health begins to visibly decline, the ranch itself starts to feel different. Not broken, not falling apart, just tense, like it's holding its breath. Everyone senses what's coming, even if no one dares to say it out loud. Spencer Dutton, the last living bridge to the old world, is running out of time. And once he's gone, there will be no single voice left strong enough to command loyalty without question. This is where power starts shifting in subtle, dangerous ways. Decisions that once went through Spencer now happen in whispers. Alliances quietly form. Conversations take place behind closed doors. The ranch stops being a home and starts becoming a territory. And territory always invites conflict. The land hasn't changed, but the way people look at it has. It's no longer something to protect together, it's something to win. Elizabeth understands this shift better than anyone. She doesn't push aggressively. She lets the tension do the work for her. Every unanswered question about inheritance strengthens her position. Every delay in clarity weakens John's. Her son, now grown enough to understand what's at stake, is no longer just a shadow in the background. He represents an alternative future for the ranch, a different Dutton path that never got its chance. And the longer Spencer avoids naming a successor outright, the more dangerous that alternative becomes. For John, this is the moment where fear turns into resolve. He realizes that being loved isn't enough. Being raised on the ranch isn't enough. Even blood isn't enough unless it's recognized. The idea that something could be taken from him, something he's already internalized as his responsibility, ignites a quiet fury. He doesn't lash out, he doesn't rebel, he studies, he waits, he learns how authority is claimed, not given. Spencer watches all of this with painful clarity. He knows the legacy he's built is already slipping out of his control. No matter what choice he makes, someone will be destroyed by it. If he secures John's future too forcefully, he condemns Elizabeth's son to a lifetime of resentment. If he leaves the question open, he dooms John to a war he may not survive emotionally. There is no clean ending here, only damage control. This internal struggle accelerates Spencer's decline. The weight of decades presses down all at once. He isn't afraid of death, he's afraid of what his death will unleash. The ranch has always survived because someone strong was willing to make the final call. And now, for the first time, Spencer hesitates. That hesitation ripples outward. People feel it. And when leaders hesitate, others prepare to step in. What makes this even